Hello, my name is Renee Long, a creative writer and founder of the LitHabits Writers Workshop. Welcome to this week's video broadcast for the LitHabits blog. This broadcast is very, very special to me because this week I'm interviewing an immensely talented poet and a dear, dear friend of mine, Melissa Reeser Poulin. Melissa Reeser Poulin is the author of Rupture Light from Finishing Line Press and co-editor of the anthology Winged, New Writing on Bees. Her poems and essays can be found in Relief Journal, Entropy Magazine, Writers Resist, Ruminate Magazine, Hip Mama, Coffee and Crumbs, among other journals. She writes a newsletter and blogs at melissareeserpoulin.com. For any of you who have struggled to integrate your writing life into daily life, family life, and your other creative interests, this interview is for you. Melissa is one of the most curious, creative, and nurturing people I know, and you'll see this from the interview. She has a lot more going on than just writing poems. She is the epitome of a lifelong learner, diving into biology, acupuncture, community development, and it all informs her creative process. In this interview, we talk about how it's okay to write less and let go of the guilt of not writing enough or not being enough. How we writers should ditch our shoulds and be kinder to ourselves. We talked about how she deleted all of her social media accounts while remaining a fierce advocate for the benefits of true community. And you'll learn how to create a narrative arc out of a collection of poems, and so much more. This is a good one. I'm so excited you're here today. It's always an honor to spend time with Melissa and benefit from her wisdom, and I'm delighted to share this interview with you. Without further ado, here's my chat with Melissa Reeser Poulin. Oh, we are here today with the lovely Melissa Poulin. She is an amazing writer that I've known for quite a few years and one of my dearest, dearest, dearest friends and the leader or facilitator of my beloved writers groups. Welcome, Melissa. We're so glad to have you here. So let's just jump right in. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your writing?
Sure. Thank you. Hi, everybody. And thank you, Renee, for having me. I just think you are a rock star for doing this, and like being able to do a video interview at all is kind of magical to me.
Thank you.
So, yeah. So I'm Melissa. I have a new book of poetry out. I write mostly poetry and essays. I've been writing since I was a little girl. I have a couple of degrees in creative writing. And in the last couple of years, I've had two amazing kiddos. And I've also gone through some pretty major injury and physical events that have kind of shifted my path. So now I'm heading down the road of becoming an acupuncturist, which I'm very excited about, but also still continuing to do writing, which is just part of who I am and has been since I was little.
One of the things I love about you is that you have all of these different interests and yet still find time to get the work done and be consistent and publish a book, which is amazing. Rupture Light, everybody get it. It's so amazing. It's just lovely poetry, balm for the soul, and so many good things. So we're going to talk about that. So first, and this kind of ties back to what you were talking about and all these different things that you're involved with, what would you say is one non-writing habit that's made a positive impact on your writing practice?
Yeah, I think just going back to school has actually had a pretty positive impact on my writing practice. Becoming a mom has really shifted the way that I think about practice at all. What can a writing practice look like in 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes, you know, kind of squished in around nap times and stuff. So then adding on top of that, now I'm going to use a lot of those precious extra moments that we have working with my family to like figure out where does the time come for me to go back to school. And so I'm taking these pretty intensive, for me, science courses. I haven't been in a science classroom since I was, 16 years old. And so I think having to relearn how to be a student in that setting, like I've I've been a student of writing as an adult, but kind of having to face a lot of fears around science and relearn how my mind works, how I learn. Those things have been really good for me and kind of like toughening me up a little bit, so that when I then sit down and I make time to write and work on my writing projects, I'm kind of like already in this other gear of like, I can do this and I have to be intentional about this. This is the time that I have for it, and there will be no other time. So like, you know what I mean? Like, if I want to pass this test, I have to study, even if I want to, you know, go on Facebook or watch Gossip Girl or, you know, do the dishes or whatever. No, I have to study the endocrine system because that is my test on Tuesday. And so same with writing, like I have 2 hours, you know, my husband is watching the kids so that I can do this writing stuff that's so important to me. I better do it, you know? So I think it's kind of like created additional urgency and boundaries around writing and time.
Absolutely. And it sounds like you've really developed that kind of inner muscle, like that inner grit muscle and willpower by being involved in all these different things, right? And kind of tapping on those different areas of your brain that spark your interest. So like you said, like it creates that sense of urgency. But that's so wonderful, because I think it's so easy for writers to, you know, it's so easy to get burnt out. But if you kind of have that attitude of endless curiosity and that the time is now, like we don't have any more time after we die, right? We only have a limited number of years here on earth. Like now is the time, if this is the work we're choosing to do. And that's the other, you know, in hearing you talk about that, that's the other thing I notice is that you're choosing it. Like you're saying yes to it rather than like, oh, I'm just so tired, or I'm burnt out, or I'm just exhausted, which we all, you know, regardless of where we are in life, we all feel at certain times like we don't want to, you know, get up early or stay up late to do the work that we love, but we have to choose it if that's what we want out of our lives, right? So I really love that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I mean, I will say that I write a lot less right now in this season of life, and it's been like a process for me to not feel anxious about that. Even before I was in school, and before other stuff that kind of like, you know, changed the way that I do life happened, I think I felt like I should be writing the same amount that I was before I had kids, or whatever the should was. Like writing has to look this particular way. I have to have this specific number of things written or published, or who knows. Like it wasn't even like I had any kind of metrics in my mind about what writing should look like, but there was still this heavy sense of should, you know? And I think maybe it's getting older and having kids, and maybe it's just I don't know, just becoming wiser about what is really important in life. I feel like I don't do that to myself as much anymore, of like, I am only going to write for 2 hours this month, you know, and that's okay because of all the other things that are important to me that I'm doing, you know, or like, because, you know, my kid isn't sleeping right now and I really just need to sleep, you know. Absolutely. I would read lots of interviews as like when my kids were really young, like babies, where the moms were like, well, I get up at 5 a.m. and I make my coffee and I write. And I'm like, my kid is up at 5 a.m. and I'm pissed. Like, I don't want to be, you know, whatever. I'm like, that is not when I'm in a state to get out my pen and have lovely, quiet writing time, you know? So sometimes it's like, you choose sleep, or you choose going on a walk with your girlfriends because that's what you need to do for yourself, and that's okay too.
100%. I agree. And that was something, you know, that kind of ties into my next question, which I'll just like weave into this conversation here, is a lot of people like kind of buy into this myth because a lot of like, you know, prolific or famous writers will say, like, you must write every day because that's, you know, the only way to be a real writer is if you write every day because it develops the habit and blah, blah, blah. But if you actually read the biographies and the lives and interviews with writers, it really varies. Like, sure, there are plenty of folks who write every day at 4 a.m, and that's great. That works for them. But there are plenty of writers who are self-identified binge writers. Like Cheryl Strayed has come out and said, like, I'm a binge writer. I write when, you know, I choose to write. And sometimes that's in like long sprints or long marathons. And then I don't write for months. And I know Lydia Yuknovich, I believe, has said the same thing, that she's more of a binge writer. And what you were saying earlier about finding like moments here and there, I'm pretty sure it's Toni Morrison who said, you know, when her kids were young, she wrote in the cracks, right? The cracks of life. And that, you know, sometimes that's just the type of writer you are, and it doesn't make it, and it's comforting to hear that you embrace it, because I think a lot of folks still cling to that idea of, I must be this type of writer, or I should, like you were just saying, that restrictive language of I should be this type of writer and be doing it this way, when number one, all our styles are all different in terms of how we work, and number two, our lives are different and our interests are different. And if you're pursuing acupuncture and raising children, you're going to have to find the cracks if you also want to write, and that's completely valid too. Or take breaks, and that's valid too. Like, I think folks think that if they're not writing every day, they're not a real writer. And it's just a huge myth. So I'm really glad you shared that with us. And to prove it, like, you published a book. So there's no like refuting that this is true. Same with Cheryl Strayed, Toni Morrison, Lydia Yuknovich. They still all published books. So everybody needs to calm down. But you and I met each other through our mutual love for Ruminate magazine, which everybody should check out. We love Ruminate. And we met back in 2015, and you asked me to join a writers group you were forming. And so being a part of this amazing group of women writers has been such a nourishing, beneficial experience for me, and I think for you as well, of course. So how would you say community and creating what I would call a writerly web has played a role in your creative life?
Yeah, I love that question. I love our writing group.
I know, me too. We love them.
I love all of the images that you gave us earlier too, about the different ways that people write. I never had heard that about Toni Morrison, and I really like that, writing in the cracks.
It might have been someone else, but I just seem to attach it to Toni Morrison because I know for a fact that was her routine. Like when folks would ask her, like, yeah, when do you write as a mom? And she would be like, when I can. And if I can't, I can't. You know, like, I'm raising my son. So it might have been her who said, some woman, mother, writer said about the cracks, writing in the cracks. And it might have been Toni Morrison, but it might not have been. But I know that she did write in the cracks, so.
Yeah, and like nobody asks writers who are fathers, like, when do you write, you know? Because exactly. There's this just like entrenched role that women are often in. And then there's also women who are divorced, you know, and so they have their kids part-time. And so they're also moms, but they're also have this sort of like window of opportunity to do other things when their kids aren't with them, which is like a double-edged gift, you know. It's like it's both gift and really hard. So there's so many ways of being, and I think that's what to me is so important about community, is because you get so many different perspectives. If I'm just writing by myself, I'm just deprived. The texture of what I'm able to bring into my writing is limited, you know. Like, I think when we get together and we talk about our lives, I think that's really important. Like, we always kind of snack and talk for the first hour, and we kind of like joke about that, but I think that's also part of it, is like connecting and talking about what does it mean to be a writer, when we're also dealing with all of these other things in our communities, in our neighborhoods, and in our little families or our bodies. You know, there are so many different ways of thinking about community. Like your body is its own community, you know, and how do you steward all of those like competing pieces, you know? So I think that conversation is important. And then talking about something that I've been working on with you guys, you will always kind of help me see pieces of it that I wouldn't be able to see on my own. And I also have a really hard time seeing my writing, hearing my writing at all. Like I don't really know what it is until it's reflected back to me. So that's just such a gift, I think, that the group offers is, you're doing this thing in your writing. Are you aware of that? No, I'm not aware of that. Okay, well then here's some opportunities to develop that, and here's some places you could go with it, you know? I think that's really exciting, and it's fun to play that role for the other writers too, for you guys. I also think that there are really important connections between personal growth and community growth, and you can't separate them. And I think that's what is so meaningful to me about doing any work in community, and why I'm attracted to community acupuncture, not just, you know, individual session acupuncture, which is also beautiful. But my introduction, my experience of acupuncture has always been the community model, where you're in a room with other people, you're all receiving distal point acupuncture in recliners, and everyone's just napping together. And it's like the most beautiful space that you could enter into. And it's more than just, I am receiving acupuncture and the acupuncture is doing things for me. It's like I'm participating in that healing work on an individual level, and then I'm also benefiting from the work that the person next to me who's sleeping is doing in their own body. Like sometimes I'll come into the room and I'm totally anxious, and my thoughts are moving really fast, and the person next to me is like a super strong napper, and their energy, I think, helps me be able to actually get the benefits of that treatment. So that's kind of a tangent from writing, but I think like it's all connected. And I really feel like more and more people are making that connection between, I can't create this self-care routine, this growth routine on my own. I have to do it in conjunction with work that I'm doing for others and with others in my community. You know, like I'm not just doing this work for myself, you know, and I think that's the same with writing. I'm not just writing for myself. I'm writing because, you know, I have been given this gift and I want to share it with other people. You know, I don't want to just, I don't know, collect publications and feel happy about myself, you know. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, all of the things. Yeah. And I was just gonna, you know, when you started talking about the community acupuncture, I was gonna kind of ask if that was connected to also your main motivation or your main big why for writing. And you kind of answered it that it was. And I love that. And I really, you know, one of my missions with LitHabits and in my own writing and in my own teaching is I feel we're on this earth to connect, and we are wired, you know, even on a biological level, like we're herd animals, we're evolved from primates. We need community. And I think I love what you were saying about, it's such a lovely metaphor too for writing community, because the idea of somebody who has a strength, who is next to you, and they're able to kind of, and your strengths are kind of able to like intermingle and become synergistic, like where synergy is like 1 + 1 = 5 or 6 or 7. Like it like the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And I really believe that we are wired that way. And people like to say that writing as this solitary endeavor, when in fact, I think most writers, they're writing for themselves, especially creative writers and poets, but they're also writing to connect. They all are also searching for that resonance that happens between communication and communication, which requires both a listener and a speaker, or a listener and a communicator. So yeah, I agree with everything you said. Is all beautiful, and it's so inspiring. So awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So everybody out there, get a writing community if you don't have one already. It's so important. It's so vital to your creative health and to your health in general. Everything she just said, it's so important. You were talking, we were talking a little bit earlier. So you have decided to take a full hiatus, a full break from all of your social media accounts. I think you even said you deleted them completely as an experiment, and you're planning to actually write about your experience. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I have been on Facebook for 15 years, and I learned
that wild. I remember when we were all signing up for Facebook back when it first came out. It's crazy. Anyway, keep going. It's wild.
So I learned that because I had made the decision that I was going to completely delete my Facebook account, which I had been thinking about for a while, in some ways connected to the election and politics, and then also my kids. And like, I had started sharing pictures of them on Facebook, and then later was like, ooh, I don't know if I want to do that, given all of this stuff that's coming out about facial recognition software and all of this stuff. And that's just my own personal feelings about it. Other people have different feelings about it, and that's okay. But I think more recently I had switched from a flip phone to a smartphone, which is like, people did that a long time ago, but I just did that recently. And at first I was really excited about it, because I was like, I can finally do this whole Instagram thing. I can see the emojis that people send me that before were just little boxes, and it'll be fine because I am pretty good with, phone use. Like I won't get addicted. Not true at all. Like, all of these patterns were developing in me that I really didn't like. And I read this book called Irresistible by Adam Alter, which is all about behavioral addiction. And it's fascinating. It's a really good book. And it talks a lot about internet addiction. And for me, I just felt like, I don't need this in my life. Like, it doesn't feel good for me. And it's a very complex thing, because on the one hand, I've had this network that I've been building for 15 years that's made up of all these people who I love. But on the other hand, that's the only way that I'm connecting to them, and I don't know if I want that to be the long-term way that I am in connection with people. And so that means I'm going to have to, I don't know, just kind of come to terms with what that feels like to not know what's going on in their lives, and with stuff like the earthquake, that we recently had, and other things, sometimes it's really nice to be able to check in and see like what's happening and how's everybody doing, but ultimately I felt like I don't like what this is doing to my brain. And so I started reading about, okay, well, how do you delete all of your information? And it's like a long process, and it's kind of scary because there's a lot that you don't have control over. Anyway, I could talk about this for a long time, but through the process of deciding I'm going to delete it, I downloaded my information from Facebook, which you can do at any time. You don't have to delete it to do that. And that's how I learned, like, oh my gosh, I've been on here since 2004. And it was really interesting to kind of see all of the information that was there about me. Anyway, so yeah, completely deleted that and Instagram, and it feels really good. It feels like I have more spaciousness in my life. I feel like I can practice presence more, and I notice more when I have the like reflex to go and check Facebook or go and see what's like procrastinate, you know, and I'd make a different choice. I'd do something else. I don't know. I told my dad a while back that I was going to do this, and he sent me this really funny cartoon about somebody who says, I'm going to, you know, not be on Facebook or whatever, and then they like basically disappear from the earth. You know, like it can be profound, or it can be just like it's fine. It's not a big deal too.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're still a human. You still can text, you can still call people on the phone, you can still go to the grocery store and do all the things. And yeah, it's so interesting. And I also think it's really brave of you too, because they're not, you know, speaking of myths that writers buy into, and this myth is heavily perpetuated, and a tough one is that, oh, you have to have a platform online of some sort on social media to publish traditionally, right? And everybody, you know, many people, especially in the literary world, want to publish traditionally. And I really don't believe that's a 100% a requirement. I think there are other ways you can build a community online that don't involve social media. You could build, you know, a blog or an email list, and yeah, maybe it'll be a little longer to grow because you're not, you know, putting it out there on Instagram or Facebook or wherever. But there are still writers out there who are doing that have absolutely no social media presence. So it's, again, one of those things like, you have to write every day. It's the same kind of destructive myth. Like you have to buy into this thing that can really be unhealthy for writers, especially, you know, the creative spirit. Like, you know, all the things that social media does, like it's the comparison sinkhole. It's just not necessarily healthy for the amount of time that the average American spends on social media or on their phones. So if it is something, you know, that a writer struggles with, that they're like, man, I really wish I could get off social media, but I know I need it for my, you know, to create a platform. I think there's other ways to do that. Like, I think it's doable to figure out something else. That's my spiel on it. Yeah, I feel like we could talk about just about social media and the creative spirit and writers and publishing for hours and hours and hours. But I do want to talk to you about your incredible book. So in Rupture Light, if, you know, for those who aren't familiar, so it is a book of poems, of beautiful, beautiful poems. And I actually wrote a review of Melissa's book for Ruminate. So you could check that out. I will link that in the transcript. But I really likened her to the experience of reading Mary Oliver or Denise Levertov, and it just very much soothing to the soul. So if you enjoy poetry, and, you know, even if it's like on difficult topics, I definitely recommend picking this up and enjoying it. It's a wonderful summary. In Rupture Light, you're really working with difficult, kind of really thorny topics like miscarriage and loss and fear and anxiety and all of these kind of this push and pull of waiting for motherhood to come or waiting for the arrival of a baby to come. And that desire, that constant, like as I was reading it, the experience I had was just this deep aching desire, and then joy of arrival, and also a lot of sadness in there as well. So all of that said, can you talk about the emotional journey of writing about trauma and writing about these kind of heavier topics?
Thank you for your nice words and for your beautiful review. You should all read Renee's review just because she just wrote it so well. It's just so well written.
Oh, thank you.
I appreciate that. I worked on this book. There are poems in there from 2013. So those poems were written over the course of many years, and there were many poems that came in and around those poems. So I would say that it didn't necessarily feel like here I am sitting down to write a book about miscarriage or about trauma. The book was kind of plucked out of a stack of other poems. And through the help of two of my close poet mama friends, Jill McKenna and Caitlin Dwyer, who both read drafts of those manuscripts and were like, this poem can go, this poem can go, and this poem needs to be in this spot. Because that was something that I really struggled with, was like, I knew that I had these strong poems that had been published in journals or had been workshopped in other places as a whole, and people had said, okay, yes, these are ready to go, but I didn't really know how to put them together, like a mixtape, like how do you tell a story with stories? And so working with my friends, that really helped me a lot to kind of see a narrative arc through them.
And just to chime in there, that worked. Like that, it completely, to me, read like a perfect arc within, even though they were littler stories and little vignettes and smaller poems, the arc really worked. They worked so well in the order that you placed them. So it was awesome.
Yeah, well, thanks to my friends. I really think that was a whole part of the writing process that I was new to. I didn't really know about that. Like I've wanted to make books since I was a little girl, but I didn't really know how does a book of poetry come together. And I think they come together in lots of different ways, and that's how this one came together. So I will say that, like, writing about those difficult experiences, I think it's different for everybody. I think I wrote a lot about, the miscarriages for myself before I was ready to write about it in any kind of artistic way. Like I would write emails to my friends, or I'd write in my journal, or I'd write down a prayer, or, that kind of processing writing. And then a whole bunch of other stuff to help me move that experience of grief and trauma and physical healing through my body, from acupuncture and counseling and other kinds of body work. Really, things happen to us in our body, and we have to use our bodies to release them too, and to integrate them. And so I think that those experiences didn't really start coming through in my art until they were part of my experience, and I had kind of found a place for them in my own story about who I was and what my life was about. That's when I started seeing that story come out in my writing in a way that felt okay. Like it felt like this is something that I am ready to share with other people. This is something that is part of me, so I can't not write about it. I think that's the other thing, is just being like, I'm writing a story about this, or I'm writing an essay about this thing, but I can't really tell you about it without, you need to also know this about me, And I think that's like part of any relationship or connection. And, you were talking about how writing is about connecting. If you meet somebody for the first time, you have to find out other things about them before they can really tell you, the most important thing.
Totally. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, because it really, just reading the book, it does really feel like a complete and whole piece. And you're just kind of, and again, like, folks should go read the review, because I feel like I phrased it much better in writing, which is, we're writers, so that's to be expected. But this tug of emotions throughout the reading process, it really felt like, again, like you were saying, like a connection, you know, you feel connection with the speaker of the poems. And even though, and one thing I wrote about in the review was that, you know, as a non-parent, as not being a mother myself, I still felt viscerally affected by the poems themselves, which, you know, many of them are centered on motherhood. So yeah, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful piece of work. I love it. And so on that same note, so you told our writers group recently that the poem Nullus Partus, which I might say between that one and maybe Yellow, and then the one about the apple tree, those probably are my three favorite poems of the whole book. And you said that Nullus Partus actually woke you out of sleep at 4 a.m., beckoning to be written. So can you share more about that experience?
Yeah, so that's one of those rare poems that has come to me whole. That hasn't happened to me very often in my life. And I had my first pregnancy was an ectopic pregnancy, so it was a miscarriage, and then we had to wait a long time before we could have another baby. And so I was just in that process of like, what does that mean? You know, how do I accept that? And I was pretty far along in that journey of just like, I am grieving this and moving forward. And this poem just woke me up. Like I was somewhere between sleeping and awake, and I could hear the words, and I just kind of went into our living room, and I didn't even turn on the light, and I grabbed some little nubby pencil and a piece of paper that I think was like a bill, you know, and was like writing on the back of it in the light of the street lamp, because I knew like if I try to do this for real, if I like go to the computer, I turn on a light, it's just gonna go away, you know. I need to stay half asleep. So I wrote down what I could hear and remember, and then I went back to sleep. And then the next morning, I took those notes and I sat down and I crafted it into a bigger poem. And the sound of it, the rhythm and the sort of dreamlike imagery is still what I received at night. But then it's also gone through revision, and I think that was really important for me personally, because it was kind of like my whole self telling me, okay, it's time. Like, it's time for you to process this and share it with other people. And it's time for you to have another child. So like shortly after that, then we were going to have our daughter. And I was like 10 weeks pregnant with her. And I went to this writing retreat in New Mexico and workshopped this poem. And through that experience, I met a wonderful writer who had had a similar experience, and she helped me give it a title and kind of end it and lineate it in a way that it made it a lot stronger. And then she helped me find a home for it and publish it. And I have had similar gifts from that poem ever since. Like all the time, like by sharing it with other people. I have been given so many gifts of relationship. Like I've met so many women who have had similar experiences, or women who have shared the poem with others in their lives who needed to hear that someone else had that experience. And that means more to me than anything, you know, like that's like, for me, how I feel like God is real. And it's also how I feel that I am doing what I'm supposed to do. You know what I mean? Like I've had to kind of like let go of feeling like writing needed to be a particular thing for me in my life. And I'm so glad that I did, because this is what I want. You know, I want more of those connections and relationships.
Well, that it sounds like that letting go opened a channel in you, right? Like, and I asked you this question because that if you read lives of writers and artists, that it's so common, this type of experience is so common, although not common, like you were just saying, like it'll happen a few rare times in an artist's life. I think, and Elizabeth Gilbert tells the story of Tom Waits, where he is in the car and he's sitting in like in probably like LA traffic, and a song comes to him and it's like right outside the window, and he's like, well, I can't help you right now. Can you go go to somebody else who can help you, and like you can be the channel for you. And I just think that's, or come to me when I'm like ready to receive you. And that's just like a funny example, but you'll read that all throughout the history of artists and creatives. What do you think that is? Do you think that is God speaking to us and asking for something to be put out into the world, and we are the channel for it? Or I don't want to put words into your mouth. So what do you think that is, that kind of like gifting, and when the channel is open, something comes through us?
I have no idea. I don't know at all. I love to hear other people's ideas about it. Like, I think Elizabeth Gilbert talks about like the ideas are looking for a home, and I mean, I think that's kind of cool. I have no idea. But for me, it helps me. It is part of my faith, because writing has always been connected to God for me. Like, writing is how I process what I see and what I feel, things that I can't put into words until I start trying to put them into words. To me, that's like spirit, that's the creative spirit, is meeting you there and showing you what you already know. So experiences like waking up with a poem, I mean, that's just like other level. I have no clue. You know what I mean? It's like something that I can't really even put into words, but it affirms what I already feel about the creative spirit.
Yeah.
And those experiences are more daily, more like, I know that if I show up at the page and I have a question, I will get some kind of answer, and that's not just me making it up,
Right. Yeah.
It's spirit.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel. I know other people don't feel that way, and that's okay too.
I know there's a lot of different ideas about what that is and where that comes from, and whether it's just within us or coming from somewhere else, or muses or God. And I just love that discussion, because it's you'll find different reports of that kind of experience, and just exactly how you described it. So it's something miraculous for sure, wherever it comes from.
Yeah.
Anyway, so on that note, would you be willing to read a poem for us of your choosing?
Sure. Yeah. What would you like to hear? Should I read?
Well, yeah, I feel since we were talking about its miracle of how it came to you, I think that would be appropriate. Let's do it.
Nolus Partis. I wanted a child, so I took my temperature, charted mountains on blue graph squares, compared basin to crest, like a traveler in a desert landscape, like an architect on the moon. I had a child, but she had no bones, he had no sex, no name, she had no heartbeat, no birthday. I tried to imagine myself without these things. I heard a voice in the night with no body shaking me. Who am I in the night with no child? Weightless, groundless, like an astronaut. At night, I dreamed the child was an astronaut, seeking me, seeking a planet to land on. And every day she chose someone else. I said to the ocean, Jesus, if you give me this, I will give you everything I have, which is nothing, which is endless, like the landscape inside me. I dreamed nothing, an ocean white as sleeplessness, dark as a body on the inside. It was murky as blood, and I hid in it, and my want felt like an animal beside me.
That's a miracle poem. I love it. So I wish we could just end on that. It's so magical. But I do want to ask you, if you had one piece of advice to give to aspiring writers, what would that be?
I don't know. I guess it would depend on the writer, like, is the aspiring writer a 10-year-old? If so, then that aspiring writer should read a lot of poems and sing a lot of poems and write a lot of poems, or whatever they want to write, and not listen to anybody who is judging their poems. Just keep making them. Just make them. And if that aspiring writer is in their 20s and out of college and trying to figure out, okay, I've got this degree and I have no money and I love writing, I think just be kind with yourself and don't worry so much about publishing, but focus on relationships and connections. Not in a like cheesy like networking way, like I'm gonna go schmooze it up and like meet all the people and then I'll be famous, but like find your tribe, like find your community of writers, find other writers who are writing the kind of stuff that you want to write, and talk to them and learn from them and share with them what you're writing. I think like, yeah, if you're in your 20s, like stay up late and go to all the open mics and like, I don't even know what's going on anymore.
Capitalize on that energy. Because it's going away.
It's 9 o'clock. I'm going to go to bed soon.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's what I wish that someone had told me in my 20s when I was freaking out, because I was like, I'm not getting published anywhere and I need to be publishing everything all the time. Like, it'll come. I think focusing on where you feel at home is more important. Finding the journals that you actually read and you actually like, that's where your people are,
And read the journals.
And read them and subscribe to them, especially Ruminate.
Yes, subscribe to Ruminate. I love it.
Yeah, and then if that aspiring writer is like me and in their 30s and has children or doesn't have children, I guess it would be the same, more being gentle on yourself and more finding your people, and gosh, I also think you can do a lot less as you get older. So cut out the stuff that you really don't need. Like for me, social media, I'm like, I have no time. So why am I doing this thing that doesn't help me? That's what I got. It's not terribly profound.
No, all of that was perfect. That is all amazing advice, and I think perfect for the context of all of those people, of all of where they are in life. So thank you so much. Okay, so where can people connect with you? Where can people, I know you're off of social media, but where can they find your work and hear about what's next for you?
So I do have a website, which is my name, melissareeserpoulin.com. I blog there maybe every month, maybe less. I will update there with my writing. There's a list of publications there that I keep updated. I do have an email subscription, like you can sign up to get a newsletter. I really don't send them very much at all. Yeah, that's about it. You can email me on my website. I would love to get an email from you. And
yes.
So simple, right?
Wonderful. Yes, absolutely. And so if they wanted to buy your book, where could they do that? On your website?
You can buy it on my website or on Amazon or on the Small Press finishing line on their website.
Wonderful.
There's also a couple in bookstores. And yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. And we'll link to all of those in the transcript. So no worries there. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Melissa. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you as always. You are such a lovely person and a lovely poet, and I'm so blessed to know you. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me.
Thank
Love
you.
you.
Thank you, Renee.
Hey, it's Renee here. Thanks so much for listening to this interview. If you want to learn more about Melissa, head over to her website at melissareeserpoulin.com to read her blog, hop on her newsletter, or buy her beautiful book, Rupture Light. Did you like this interview? Hop on my free VIP list so you're the first to know when new interviews, articles, and videos for writers go live on the LitHabits blog. I'll be in your inbox once a week with fresh strategies to help you overcome procrastination, build your courage muscle, and create a writing habit and schedule aligned with your soul. Plus, when you become a VIP, you get instant access to my free workshop, How to Beat Has This All Been Done Before Syndrome. Just pop your name and email into the form below to join the LitHabits VIP community and get that workshop now.